Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, monomili wanji, namaste, jumbo, bienvenidos. Hi, my name is Jedley, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We're coming to you from the beautiful neighborhood of Reedville, in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. We are so delighted and so honored that you are joining us in our mission to help families grow closer through reading. Please be sure to subscribe to the show on the iHeartRadio app, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Stitcher Radio, Ghana, Himalaya, Good Pods, wherever you find your podcasts. Our guest today is Tom Tracy. He is here today to celebrate Scoochie's adoption story. Before we invite Tom into the studio, we want to let you know that this episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast is brought to you by Candlewick Press, publishers of This Is a School, written by John Shue and illustrated by Danica Mckellar Jameson. I love This Is a School. In this moving celebration of schools and the people that make up the communities within, John Shue reminds us all that a school is much more than a building. It's a place for work and play, creativity and trust, and a supportive community that extends beyond the walls. We had This Is a School at our Buttonwood Park Zoo celebration for the episode 1500 of the podcast, and the families there just loved it. They loved the artwork. They loved the message. I know that you and your family are going to love it too. This Is a School, published by Candlewick Press. It is sure to be one of your back-to-school favorites, and it's available now wherever you buy your books. This episode of the podcast is also brought to you by Yet, beautiful, inspiring book by Gina Giordano. Have you ever heard your children or your students say that they couldn't do something or that it was too hard? You know, we've all fought a case of the knots before. Yet by Gina Giordano teaches kids that it's okay to make mistakes and that actually mistakes can be learning tools. Yet is a superhero who helps the citizens fight the negativity the evil Knot twins bring to their town and helps the citizens discover their own superpower, the power of Yet. This is a great lesson for young and old alike, and it has a really, really powerful message that you and your kids are going to love talking about for a long time. Check it out today, a great addition to your family library, Yet, by Gina Giordano. Join us right now from one of my favorite parts of the world, beautiful South Jersey, the beautiful state of New Jersey. Our guest today is here to celebrate his wonderful children's book. It's called Scoochie's Adoption Story. Please welcome to the show, Tom Tracy. Hey, Tom, how are you?
Hey, Jed. I'm great. How are you?
I'm wonderful. You know, I'm looking through the magic of technology. I'm able to see into Tom's space there, and it is just lovely. There's all these colors, and it's really cute.
Yeah, you're seeing all the toys behind me. So I'm downstairs in our basement, which during the COVID pandemic, we finished our basement to create extra space, and it has quickly become our children's play space. So you're seeing all the toys.
There you go. And I'm imagining that at this time, during this heat wave, that the basement must be the coolest place in the house.
It's the reason I'm here right now. You got that right.
That's why the studio is in my basement.
Smart thinking.
So I'm looking at Scoochie's toys.
Yeah, you totally are. So Scoochie is inspired by my 5-year-old daughter. And so these are her toys that you're looking at. Absolutely. And since I wrote this book, I'll just share there's I don't want to jump ahead of myself here, but there is a nod in the book to a second adoption. And I am tickled to tell you that since I published this book, that second adoption has been finalized. So I have 2 little girls that are officially our adopted daughters in the home right now.
Well, congratulations. And I want to thank you. And I think that making the choice to adopt a child, it's not something that every family is able to do. It's not, being a foster parent is not something every family is able to do. But I think that adopting a child is one of the most loving, selfless acts a family can do. And there are so many children out there. We've had Dr. John DeGarmo on, who is a foster care expert, and he tells us, I think the number is 600,000 kids or 400. Every day there are this half a million kids in the foster care system waiting to find that forever home. And so that you have created that forever home for two children is such a beautiful thing. So I just want to acknowledge that and to encourage anybody who's listening, if this is something that you've been thinking about, please keep thinking about it because it's needed.
I really appreciate you saying that, Jed. I got to tell you, it's the best thing that could have ever happened to us. They were our gift. They bring so much joy into our lives. And we are happy to provide a stable home for them, a loving home for them. And the best part about our adoption, to be honest with you, is we have an open relationship with both of our daughters' biological parents and biological families. So not only do they have us as their family, but they also still have a relationship with their biological family. So they're doubly blessed because they get two sets of parents and families through the adoption process. So that's been really important for us to maintain that relationship.
That's wonderful. Now, if I'm not incorrect, you and your partner being able to adopt probably wouldn't have happened 15, 20 years ago. Am I right?
Yeah. So it was 2000. Somebody's going to yell at me because I'm going to get my date wrong here, but I think it was 2000. I don't know. I don't remember. But it was just the 2000 teens when the federal law or the Supreme Court, we had federal protection for marriage, which was great. And it made things a bit easier. There were same-sex adoptions that were occurring 15 years ago, for sure. They certainly weren't as common and as open as they are now. And I think that the Federal Marriage Protection Act, is that right? Did I say that right? Oh, gosh, I don't know. Someone's going to get really mad at me.
We all get what it is. So.
But yes, our federal protection certainly created a greater opportunity for same-sex individuals that wanted to be parents to become parents.
Mm-hmm. It's I think I've shared this story on the podcast before. When the controversy about allowing gay families to adopt started rearing its head in the news. I mean, I'm almost close to 100 years old, so a lot of ideas are new, and it takes me a while to kind of wrap my head around a lot of things. And I never come up with something like hate, but it's like, I don't know, how does that work? And I remember that at that time I was kind of going, how is that going to work? And I was in Maine, in a very rural part of Maine, and I do this thing in my magic show where I hand out these little beads, and I say, tell me something that you're thankful for. And then the kids will tell me, and I'll collect the beads, and we'll magically turn them into a necklace. As I was doing this one school, there was African-American kid at the back of the room, and he stood out in most rural Maine. And I went back and I said, what are you grateful for? And he said, Jedley, you don't know me. He said, but up until yesterday, I was a foster kid and I didn't have a family, but 2 men adopted me yesterday afternoon, and for the first time in my life, I have a forever home. Oh. And at that moment, see, I'm really blessed because I knew at that moment, I know the moment that I thought that gay adoption was okay. It was at that moment when I met the kid and I said, but for those 2 men, this kid wouldn't have a family because he was 12, 13 years old. And the chances of those kids getting adopted are very, very slim.
Yeah. What a beautiful story. Thank you so much for sharing that. I mean, that's, I'll tell you, when I published the book, not to kind of take it back to the book, but I got mostly positive feedback, right? And people were really thrilled to see, two being parents and adopting and having that represented in children's literature, and supported by a lot of adoption agencies. And I did get my fair share, though, of negative feedback. Mm-hmm. And it's really amazing that folks can't see past that, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm not, whatever individual beliefs, okay. But folks can't see past that. And so some of the responses I got were about trying to convince children to be gay. I'm like, that's not what adoption is about. Adoption is about providing a loving home, and creating a forever family and completing a family. The best thing for a child is to have a life and a home filled with love, where they're cared for. And that's all adoption is, whether it's straight, gay, individual, single adoption. That's all adoption is about being able to care for a child. So I appreciate you sharing that story.
Well, I think it's important because I think, and again, people have, different faith traditions and different views and whatnot, but I don't think any of that should get in the way of love.
Sure.
That's
all it is.
And that's what this is. And, there are a couple of questions that I want to ask you, but tell us about, but first, before I get to that, tell us about the story we're going to experience when we read Smoochie's adoption story with our kids.
Yeah, so Scoochie's adoption story is actually, can I tell you the origin of this
absolutely.
Story? So it is our story. It might as well be a nonfiction book. It is pretty factual from cover to cover. But what inspired me to write the story was, so we are campers. We go tent camping, cook over the fire, do the whole bit, right? We're pretty, rustic there. We were camping, one year and, there was a playground. And so my daughter was playing on the playground and, this other girl rode her bike over to her and they were playing and the girl is looking around. And it's just like in the book, the girl's looking around and she said, well, where are your parents? And my daughter looks at her like she's got two heads. She's like, well, they're right over there. And she's pointing to me and my husband. And the girl looks and she's very quizzical and like she's really internalizing what she's seeing as a response to this question she's posed. And she finds her way over to me in a very hushed voice. She gets really quiet. She says, is she adopted? And I said, well, yes, she is. And it is okay to talk to her about it because she knows she's adopted and she understands her story. And she was 4 at the time. And so the girl went back and, when I gave her that permission, the girl felt comfortable, asking my daughter and they engaged in this conversation that I was just so privileged to overhear my daughter tell the story of how we met her birth mother, because we've told this to her since she's been born, right? We got a book. We read the book all the time. She sees pictures of her birth family. She knows the whole experience. She knows we were stuck in a hotel for 10 days because we couldn't cross state lines until we got clearances. So she knows the whole story. And she just recounted the story to her in the most proud way that this is the way her family was formed, and there was not an ounce of regret. There was not an ounce of, oh my goodness, my family's not quote unquote normal. It was, this is my family and I'm proud of them and I'm going to tell you their story. And I sat and I listened and I was like, other people need to hear that story. So when people read the book, that's what they get. They get my family's kind of origin story, if you will, kind of to use superhero terms. That's our origin story.
And what a beautiful story. And I love the fact that little girl came up to you and asked that question. I grew up in a time, and again, where I was really curious when I live in a city like Boston, which is diverse. And, so I would see folks of different races and different cultures, and I was very, very curious. And when I was a little kid, I'm sure I would stare, and I would get the don't stare, don't ask questions, don't look. And And the same thing with folks with disabilities. And I remember the first time I met a person with a prosthetic leg. Why is that person walking like that? Like, don't ask that question. I'm like, but, yeah, and thankfully, most of the people in that position who heard that I had a question and heard my parents or grandparents tell me stop asking questions, they would do what you did, which is, oh, no, you can ask me a question. And
sure.
I remember the guy with the prosthetic leg said, oh, I got a wooden leg, and he took it off and showed me.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, well, we have to normalize those things, right? It's not taboo, and especially for children. We want them to be curious. We want them to ask questions. It's how they build acceptance is through understanding.
Yeah. And I think the thing when we say to our kids, don't ask that question with that attitude, because that's always how it comes out.
Yeah.
Then we suddenly went like, oh, that I should be scared of that person.
Right. Or it's taboo.
Yeah. Ooh.
Right.
Yeah.
So I never had a chance to meet this little girl's parents, because she was just playing on the playground. She rode her bike, so I don't know where they were camping. But I thought a couple things. I thought what incredible empathy she had to be discreet and to be thoughtful, but also this, sensitivity, I guess, as well. But like you said, I was also so proud of her curiosity, and her interest, right? Because she wasn't coming from a place of judgment. She was genuinely curious. And so we need to embrace that curiosity with honesty, and with love and help to children and others, right? Because adults sometimes need help too. Just accepting things that aren't part of their everyday life, right?
Yeah. I think we talk a lot about books being mirrors, windows, and sliding glass doors. And I love that Scoochie and kids like Scoochie have this book to see themselves portrayed and see their families portrayed positively in the pages of the book. But I think it's equally important that kids from quote-unquote traditional families, and it's hard to describe these days because families...
No, I know what you're saying, though.
But it's really important for those kids to see this book, to read it with their parents, and have conversations about it with their parents. And because, number one, I think the kids can help a lot of parents deal with the issue a lot easier than... they might be able to accept it a lot easier than their parents are able to accept it.
I'll tell you a funny story. So my daughter just finished pre-K. So she's going into kindergarten in September. But we had a birthday party for her, and we invited all of her pre-K friends. And one of the moms came over to me and said, I just have to share something with you. So, I braced myself. I have no idea what's coming at this point. I have no idea what this lady's bringing to me, but I'm ready for it. And she says, well, before we came today, I sat my daughter down because I wanted her to understand that there were going to be, two dads. And so I said, did you know that your friend has two dads, and do you want to talk about it? And she said, do you know what she did? I was like, what? She looked at me and she said, yeah, I know, Mom. She talks about it all the time at school. Like, can we go now? So the mom learned from her child, don't make it a big deal.
Right.
It's okay. It's just, the way that this family is composed, or, this is the composition of this family.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the things that I saw on your website, and I need to ask because I don't know what it means. I saw the word transracial. And I'm like, I heard transgender, transportation, but I had a transracial. I don't. So you got to help me. Help this old man.
Yeah. So it was a new term to us before we entered the adoption process. So we had never heard of that as well. So transracial basically means that in the adoption world is where you hear it primarily, and it is adopting of an individual who is of a different race. So much like a blended racial family, so the term is transracial, that represents that there are different races between the parents and the children.
Now, one of the things that struck me, and I mean, I'm not quite as ignorant as I let on. it kind of was like, yeah, I can, but I was very familiar with the terms interracial or multicultural families.
Sure.
Is transracial, is that a better term for some reason? And if so, why?
Yeah, you know what? I'm going to be ignorant here and say, I don't know. I don't know. It was new to us, and we didn't ask that. We should have asked that question. We're like, is this the new way that you describe? Because we also were, we just basically said different races. We didn't have a label for it. We're just, yes, we will consider children of a different race. Yes, our daughter is of a different race than us. But I'm trying to do the right thing, right? And this is the term that's used. So, I don't know the answer to it. In full honesty, I don't know. I don't know the answer.
Well, I have a feeling that the percentage of people who don't really know the definitions of all the many new terms and phrases and expressions that are being introduced to us, I think that, we'd all kind of fall into that in one way or the other. So I appreciate your honesty.
Thank you. I feel a little silly, right? I'm the parent of a transracial or transracially adopted daughter, two transracially adopted daughters, but I never actually inquired. Well, here we go. Back to this theme. I just accepted it as the term that describes my family and my children. Yeah.
It's beautiful. One of the things I love about this story, so much I love about this story, the gift of adoption and the cooperation between you and Scoochie's birth parents, and the fact that you and your husband are able to adopt now. What I love is that kids are going to be able to see a family, individuals who've come together, who've made the choice to be family, who've made the choice to love. And that is such an important thing that we tell our kids, is that at some point in our lives, we need to recognize that we are making a choice to love somebody, to welcome into our family. And that's a really powerful thing. And I think it empowers our kids to know that, you can make somebody family.
So I'll share with you. So in the gay community, we often talk about our family of origin, or our biological family, and we talk about our family of choice. And so, so for so many of us, we have had families reject us, after we've come out of the closet. And we've had to create our own new family to, support us, to love us, unconditionally. And to wrap, figuratively and literally wrap their arms around us, when no one else felt like they would. So I'll say that number one, and I'll share another example here, and then I'll pull them together. So I'm also a social worker by training. And so part of what I have done throughout my career, and it's not new in social work, I'm not the only one that does it. But when we meet with individuals and we're doing a complete assessment and understanding, their entire environmental and family dynamics, not only do we ask about their family, quote unquote family, the proper family, but we also ask about who else do they consider to be their family. Because there are so many of us across the world, right, who, choose a neighbor, choose a family friend, and their Aunt Sally, but there's no relation, right? And so we have to recognize that, that deep love, and that definition of family extends well beyond genetics and bloodline. It is really the strongest thing that makes family. And it sounds kind of, simple, but the strongest thing that makes family is love. Yeah. So, yeah.
And, you were kind of saying what sounds simple, like simple is a bad thing, but it's really not.
Fair enough. Thank you. Thank you for checking me on that. That's absolutely right. Thank you.
It really, one of the, I'm a Catholic, and one of the things that drives me crazy is the Bible is so simple. Love each other. That's it. Love each other. And then the Vatican has to come up with this book got like 9,000 pages to tell you how to love each other. I'm like, no, I got this. I don't need that. Thank you very much.
Right.
I got it. Jesus was here. He said that in every way. And I didn't mean to get all biblical and stuff, but there's so much. There's so much that happens that this happens to. It's like, no, love. Love is really simple. And I think it's something kids understand.
I think you're absolutely right. Yeah, they do. We have a lot to learn from them, because I think, as we become adults, we often get encumbered by politics or beliefs or other people, or our own stuff gets in the way, and kids can teach us that love can be pure and innocent and unconditional, and it's a good reminder when we see it and when we experience it.
Yeah. I'll leave you with this really cute, I thought it was a really cute story. We host international kids in our home. And we've hosted a number of kids. So it's not quite foster family. It's definitely not adoption. But these kids become part of our family. And they choose to call us mom and dad, and we choose to call them our daughters and sons. And I was out at the supermarket with she. And she is a beautiful young woman from China, and she was with us when she was 17. And we were in a market, and we came up to a friend of mine, a colleague who worked with my wife for many, many years. And I said, Michael, how are you? Nice to see you. Good to see you. Hey, have you met my daughter Sophia yet? And he looked at me and looked at this beautiful young woman from China. And it's like, huh? And I saw how baffled he was. And I decided, I'm going to leave him baffled. And we went on our way.
Good for you. Good for you. I love it. That's great.
Hey, Tom, where can people go to find out more about you, find out more about your story, and find out more about Scoochie's adoption story?
Yeah, the best place, my website is chock full of good information. So you can catch me on ScoochyandSkiddles.com. I probably should spell it. So Scoochie, now I'm spelling it wrong. SCOOCHIE, and Skiddles is SKIDDLES.com. ScoochyandSkiddles.com.
Awesome. Well, we've had a wonderful time. I want to thank you for adopting. I want to thank you for the time that you've spent as a social worker. I am a failed social worker. I did it for 10 years, and I had to quit because I never mastered the ability to leave it at the office.
I understand.
And I failed, and it's okay because I found magic, and I found a little bit of magic today with this conversation. Thank you so very much.
Thank you. I appreciate that so much. My pleasure.
Please be sure to join us for the next episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Our guest will be Hollywood star, math genius Danica Mckellar. She'll be here to celebrate Double Puppy Trouble. That's the next episode. I had a blast speaking with Danica. You are going to love her. You loved her on The Wonder Years. You loved her on The West Wing. You loved her in all those Hallmark movies that she was part of. My son says that he loved her in voicing whatever DC comic strip character she voiced. And you're going to love her on the Reading with Your Kids podcast. That's the next episode of the show. I want to thank the folks who made today's show so wonderful. Of course, I want to start by thanking our guest, Tom Tracy. Please be sure to check out Scoochie's adoption story. And please, if you are thinking about adopting or fostering, please give it another and another thought. It's a beautiful, beautiful gift that you can give to your kid. And if you can, I applaud you for it. I want to thank the folks who sponsored the show. Yet by Gina Giordano. Check it out today. Great, inspiring book. We also want to thank the folks at Candlewood Press, the publishers of This Is a School by John Shue and Veronica Miller Jameson, the illustrator. I want to thank my team, Fatima Khan, Rory Grady, Nicole Belcastro, Mirabella Q, Rain Tan. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. Most of all, we all want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. And as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.